It's time to understand elements and atoms. So from the classification that we did in the previous session, we saw that uh, classification of matter based on composition, we have compounds and pure substances, and under pure substance we have compounds and elements, right? So we are going in that order to understand. So in this session we want to focus on um, understanding of these two, especially compounds and then elements. But we need to first understand elements before we can relate to compounds. Compounds is a mixture of elements. So if you mix elements together, you get compounds, right? In a definite ratio. We will talk about that. But so elements, right? Elements contains atoms. So under elements we have atoms. So that's why we need to actually take them and understand the actual difference between elements and atoms. Sometimes you can use them interchangeably, but it's good that we spend our time to actually get this difference, the real distinction between these two, because it confuses a lot of people when we are using them interchangeably and people think that they are the same. Before that, as usual, let's look at the solution from the previous session. So the previous session we were asked to solve this particular thing, and when we saw that we were asked to actually get classify them into mixtures and then um, pure substances. Yeah, right. So now salt, right, is a pure substance. So this one is a pure substance. So it's a pure substance. So salt, right, is a compound. It's a table salt, right? Salts are usually so NaCl. So this one is a pure substance. Seawater is a mixture. It contains salt, it contains water itself, it contains other things, and you can separate those things by physical means. So seawater is a mixture of a lot of things. So yeah, it's a mixture. Soil too is a mixture because it contains water, it contains the sand particles, it contains a lot of living organisms, a lot of things inside, right? Mixture, it's a mixture as well. We go to air. Air contains a lot of gases, right? Every time people are releasing gases in the atmosphere, we are taking in oxygen and we are releasing the carbon dioxide. Um, so air is a mixture. Sugar is a compound. Sugar is a simple compound on its own, and then it's just something like C6H12O6. We'll talk about that later, but sugar is a compound, pure compound, just like a salt. So it doesn't really, it's not really a mixture. It's not even a mixture. Okay, let's talk about water. Water is also not a mixture. Here we are talking about pure water itself. Pure water is also not a mixture, right? But it's a pure substance, purely water, H2O inside throughout, nothing else missing with that. Okay, so now let's go to the problem of the day, right? The problem of the day. So yeah, which is atoms and elements. So we are going to use the biscuit analogy. Let's get into that. Yeah, over here I have two biscuits that are open for you. I think the first one here, I think I'm seeing malt, right? I think malt there. And for this one, chocolate something. It has a name. I know this. Some people know biscuit, but I just wanted to use any random biscuit to illustrate the concept for you. So for each of the biscuits, right? You see they are different. One, these two biscuits are different. Actually, the name and a lot of things can tell us. Even the way the biscuits inside them are looking, they are different, right? Okay. Then let's focus on one biscuit at a time. So if you focus on this particular one first, you see it has the wrapper around it. So and then the container, let's say the rubber contains the actual biscuit that we want to eat. The actual biscuit that we want to eat is inside the rubber. So the rubber is the one covering and taking all of them together. Okay. So the same thing happened for the other biscuits as well. It has a rubber and then the biscuits are inside plenty. Okay. So when we talk about elements, right? We say elements contains atoms. So element is the container, the rubber that is containing all the atoms. So if you take this biscuit, for example, the one that encapsulates or covers everything as atom in that particular biscuit, right, is inside, right? So if we are talking about elements, we are talking about the container, right? But if you're talking about the atoms, they are the individual biscuits that we actually eat, that are the one we're actually interested in. There are different of them and they look the same. They are of the same kind in a particular distance. So if you look at this first biscuit, right, they are looking the same. If you look at this one too, for this particular biscuit, which is a different element, right? So each atoms are looking of the same kind. Yes, they are looking the same kind. Doesn't mean that each atom is the same as the other one, but like they are of the same kind. So you can also look at it as a form of a family, right? So you all have a family name, that's a surname that you use everywhere. But then after that, each of you in the family, right, you have a different first name, Kwame, Francis, Johnson, and all that. So, but all of you bear the same family name. So, element, right, refers to that family, or elements relate to that rubber of the biscuits, right? And if you open the element, you will be seeing the biscuit inside. So that's the simple analogy of the biscuit analogy of understanding the difference between element and um, compound. That's why sometimes if I go somewhere, I can represent my family over there. So if I go there, we will use elements and atom interchangeably, because so elements atoms bear the name of the family they are carrying along, right? Or the family name that they bear. Or sometimes when you are given a particular biscuit and you just eat it, knowing that you know the biscuit before, just looking at the biscuit itself, the actual biscuit inside the rubber, you don't have the rubber, you don't have access to the rubber. But then taking the biscuit alone, we can detect that, oh, this is the biscuit that I'm eating, right? So through the atoms carry the characteristics of the family. The atoms carry the characteristics of the kind of biscuit that you are eating, right? Because all the atoms are of the same kind. They are of the same kind for each element. Okay, so coming back to chemistry, chemically, if you go to the periodic table, which is a major thing that we could be using, everything that you are seeing in the periodic table like this, everything that you are seeing, each of them is an element. So what you are seeing on the periodic table are elements. So that's why the periodic table of element. That's why we say periodic table of element. So if you focus on this one, this first one is hydrogen, for example. So if you take hydrogen alone out, hydrogen contains atoms, right? So you have the proton atom, say hydrogen, one here. We also have hydrogen 1, 2 here. So deuterium, and then we also have hydrogen 3, tritium. So tritium is also there. We'll talk about that. You see, the hydrogen alone is the element hydrogen. But then the element hydrogen has what? Atoms inside, so like children inside. So if we take this particular one out, we take it somewhere, or we find it somewhere else, and then it is doing something, we'll be able to see that, oh, this particular thing is it's an atom, or you can say it's an element, it's a hydrogen element, or you can say hydrogen atom, right? Because they are all whatever you find each of these, right? They are referring to the same family name or the same biscuit rubber, right? Because this biscuit rubber, this container contains all these different children. But on the periodic table, we are just seeing the family names. Let's take it like that. Or in the periodic table, we are seeing the biscuit rubber. But inside each of them, there are the actual biscuit that we are going to use. So elements actually are just like the reference. You can look at it like the address that will help you locate an element, right? But then every element in that particular biscuit, every atoms in that particular biscuit, right, have the characteristics of the actual container. Okay. So now what's the difference? So if you do all these things at the periodic table, if all these are elements on the periodic table, and we believe that when we go to each of them, we are going to see their actual atoms. So elements contains atoms. Elements contains atoms. Just like families contain or children or members. Right? Family name is borne by everyone in the family, but each of you, right, is having your first unique characteristics. But then at the end, wherever you go, you are bearing the family name. So when you mention this, you'll be like, okay, this is Johnson here. Your sister goes somewhere to also go, this is Johnson here, because the family name is Johnson, right? Yeah, so all the elements, everything that you see in the periodic table, again, they are elements. They are elements, not atoms. So if you take each of them, then you want to talk about the hydrogen atom, then we'll be like, okay, which of the hydrogen atom are you referring to? There are some that we use commonly. So we just say that, okay, hydrogen element, hydrogen atom. So the one we use commonly. We'll go into that more detail into atoms, more specifically to actually understand. But then let's actually have the formal definition of element and hydrogen. So now let's go to element. Yeah, this is the definition for elements, right? Elements are substances. They are substances made up of the same kind of atom. It's the same kind of atom. You see the biscuits inside a particular design, they are all of the same kind. The same kind. So, or if you look at the family, they are of the same members, right? They have the same family names, right? They are substances made up, elements are the substances made up of the same kind of atoms. And this element cannot be broken down by any means, right? There's no chemical or physical means that can make it be broken down, just like how we have mixtures that we see, we can use filtration and all that to break them down, right? We have other processes for chemical, but if you come to elements, elements cannot be broken down by any known chemical or physical means, right? You can use any chemical or physical means. It's not known. There's no known chemical or physical means that can break them down like elements. There's like a strong family, right? There's nothing you can do. The person is born in that family. Like there's not naturally there's nothing you can do. You can try to give any first name or surname, but then actually by the blood connection, it's always there. There's nothing we can do, right? The person belongs to that family, whether it's strong or whatever. Yes. So now let's talk about the atoms. Yes, so what are atoms? Just like I'm asking you how to the actual biscuits inside the rubber. Atoms, they are the smallest units of an element that take part in a chemical reaction, right? And maintain the properties of that element. So when you buy the biscuit, you see that you can't eat the rubber. You are not to eat the rubber, but you open it up, and it's the atoms that you actually eat. That's like them taking part in a chemical reaction. So elements don't take part in the chemical reaction, but they are atoms. Elements themselves don't take part in the chemical reaction, but their atoms take part in the chemical reaction. So we say atoms are the smallest unit of an element. They are the individual ones. So they are the smallest unit of an element, right? Or of a family, or of a biscuit rubber that take part in a chemical reaction. So if you come to your family, right? So you say family name, and mention your family name, then your family name will not go and do anything, but then it is the member, the person, the member of the family that has to take the action to do the thing, not the family name. Okay. But then if you go to the biscuit analogy, what happens is that you will not eat the rubber, but you eat the biscuit itself. So it's the biscuit itself that take part in the chemical reaction. But when we are taking part in the chemical reaction, right, wherever you are maintaining the properties of that element. You are maintaining the properties of your family. You are maintaining the property of the biscuit that you are actually referring to. So when you are eating a biscuit, that's an example I gave. When you are eating a biscuit, you'll be able to see that the person does not know the rubber, but by taking the biscuit, the person knows that, oh, this is the kind of biscuit it is. Right? The person will be able to probably give a good guess to what the actual biscuit is, because the person could recognize by the properties, and the properties for that in that case is going to be the taste of the biscuit, or the look of the biscuit, the physical property of the biscuit, right, will allow the person to refer to this as the biscuit. That's the recognize the biscuit. But then when you say atoms, right, they are the smallest unit of an element. Smallest unit of an element that take part in a chemical reaction and maintain the properties of that element. Again, atoms are components of the elements that take part in a chemical reaction. Elements don't take part in the chemical reactions. So when we are going to be writing chemical reactions, right, we're writing atoms, and then but because for each of them you have common ones, so we'll be using them interchangeably to say, oh, this one is going to represent the entire family. So we say, okay, this hydrogen element, oh, this is hydrogen atom. We'll be using them interchangeably, but it's good that you have to actually understand that um, they are actually atoms that we write in the chemical reactions. They are actually atoms that we write in the chemical reaction, but each of them has common ones. So when we are writing the common ones, we just refer to them as elements or atoms. Anyhow you have to be. But then if you are referring to a particular element and you are not going to use the common one, if you are not going to use the common one, then you have to specifically mention the atom that you are referring to from that element, so that people will not get confused, right? But if you are just using in a chemical reaction, you are just writing the hydrogen like that, you just consider that you are using the common one for the hydrogen element. Okay, so next session we'll be talking much about the atoms, so that we actually understand the representation of atoms, how atoms are represented, like how they look, like what they contain. We actually flesh out the structure of an atom, so that we can relate to this concept. But from this session, we all agree or understand now that the clear difference between hydrogen and atom. So moving forward, we can be understanding each other's terminology when we are taking notes. See you in the next session, where we actually focus on atoms.